Local tech meetups, once an absolute anchor of tech economies around the world. How much has the pandemic and remote work changed that forever? We'll talk about that today on Culture Builder Live. I'm Chris Wink. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Technically, the news organization with a community of technologists and entrepreneurs. For many years, I personally, but certainly Technically as a news organization, we're meetup rats. We would be at all number of tech meetups, entrepreneurship meetups. They were staples of every local tech economy, certainly in the country, but largely around the world. This idea of a recurring monthly or otherwise regular event on a programming language or some concept or approach. How much has the pandemic changed that forever? I'm here to talk about that with Martin Snyder. He's a VP of engineering at Pinnacle21, also himself a longtime meetup attendee and organizer. Martin, thanks for being here.
Sure, thanks for inviting me.
Let's start with where the heck brought us to where we are. Where does tech meetup culture come from? Where did you get your start? What does that look like for you?
Well, look, I'm not a historian, and I doubt I was the first one to go to a meetup, but when I was about 8 or 9 years old, my mother took me to a Commodore 64 meetup. I don't even know where. Like I wasn't forming coherent memories back then. But people brought TVs and their Commodore 64. People brought their Commodore PET, which was the big briefcase luggable with a 4-inch screen. And they were just showing the different software they had and games and productivity things and how they use their computers. There must have been 100 people there.
Right.
And this was in the 80s. This is a long time ago. And I think the origins are that creative people and tinkerers want to share. They want to share what they know, what they've learned. They want to see what other people are doing to get new ideas, right? And kind of get a little bit of inspiration in their own tinkering and stuff. And I think that's what a lot of it comes down to, is people making a discovery, forming an opinion, having an epiphany in their work or their research or some other part of their life. And then being like, well, hey, this is interesting to me. It might be interesting to other people.
I love what you said there about tinkerers wanting to share, because it has famously aligned with Silicon Valley culture as a homebrew computing club and so many of these ideas of regular ongoing in-person show and tell kinds of events. It feels maybe obvious to say the inherent nature of technology, whether that be hardware or more recently software, is so ever changing that it's a kind of trade that, one, you often love it if you're doing it, and two, it's changing so much that if you want to be kept abreast, you just have to be constantly talking and sharing with each other. So it has a kind of culture as a form that's going to keep shifting. And so it's baked into, if you have enough of a technical workforce, if you have enough companies, it's going to be vibrant. Is that all fair?
Yeah, I think that's all fair. I mean, I think that the people that like to learn, at this point, there's too much to learn on your own. I mean, you need other people to kind of share the highlights and help you determine for yourself what you're interested in pursuing versus what you're interested in just absorbing a summary and moving on. I think that's part of it. I think also a lot of this stuff just isn't taught that well, and so you get generations of people that are continually they're reaching the same conclusions, but they're not just reading it out of a book and accepting it. And so one example in my experience is functional programming and the use of immutable data structures and stuff, where people look at generation after generation, they look at this, they're like, well, that's a fun novelty. I can't really see the application. And then when they see the application, they're like, oh my God, this is fantastic. I can't wait to tell other people about what I've learned. And then the cycle repeats itself as the people they're talking to are like, I don't really see the point. So there's a churn of learning, which I think is valuable. I think that's one of the things that the people coming to their own conclusions is what forms more lasting opinions and helps people as they grow into positions of leadership to really have some context and some lead in to the opinions they have, and not just be regurgitating what someone else told them was the right answer.
I want to bring us to where we are now, but before I do, let's talk a bit about the eve of the pandemic and what the meetup culture was. Again, largely around the world. Pretty much any large city had this, but even if we look at in the American context, I know from 15 years of reporting on local tech ecosystems that it was a real novelty to us as a news organization. By 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019. we would tell our reporters that practically any given night in any relatively
Yeah,
mid-sized or larger US city, there is somewhere a group of 5, 10, 15, 20, 50, 75 more people talking about a programming language or an entrepreneurial approach, how
yeah,
they're building or something. And that was like a really genuinely beautiful culture. It was where a lot of friendships were formed. But also it was then serving this very big economic purpose that I think went really undertold. There was we are decades into a degrees mismatch, a technical shortfall, but also a mismatch in a jobs market that meant there is so many bad faith actors, kind of
yeah,
spammy external recruiters, not all, but some. Technical talent, I often found in talking to them, found value in going to build one-to-one relationships to know, oh, my friend works at XYZ company, says it's a fine place
yeah,
to work. I might work there too. So it had a recruiting benefit without it feeling spammy. It was a lot of relationship building. Great company offices we reported on this in DC, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Baltimore, Chicago. We reported on stories of companies that essentially built event space in their company offices with the express purpose to host meetups because it was a way
yeah.
to build community, build relationships. So tell me a little bit about your view of what was like 2019 tech meetup culture before the world shook.
Yeah, everything you said is true. It was fantastic. The way I would describe it as really uniform and predictable. I mean,
Mm,
we organizations would choose, okay, we're gonna run 10 events a year, 12 events a year, monthly, this the second Tuesday of whatever. And like for Philly Jug, which I was the leader of for a number of years, and I'm still on the organizing committee for. We were booking speakers more than 12 months out.
oh, wow.
We had a list of people begging to sponsor Philly Jug meetings, which we never used because the host, the venue, and the presenter had first dibs, and we would go to a third party sponsor once or twice a year, and we probably had 10 to 20 people on that list wanting those opportunities. It was big numbers. We get like 75 to about 110 for every single month for meetups, and
Wild.
not always the same people. It was like I said, super predictable. It was great. And that was just Philly Jug, and there's so many others that were as big or bigger. Um, and there was others that I'm associated with that were more specialized than the Jug. It was fantastic. It was a great place to meet people. And like you were talking about, like the relationships being more important than the recruiting. Like one of the things, like a lot of people start off getting involved for recruiting purposes, either to be recruited or to recruit. And what they usually soon found out was that a lot of the people at the meetups aren't actually recruitable. They're people with influence more than they are, people that are
Yes, well
looking for
said.
new opportunities. And so that's why the relationships are so important, because like if I'm trying to recruit someone, well, meeting, you're not going to recruit me. It's very unlikely. But I know a lot of people, and people come to me who might be looking for new opportunities, and so that influence is the real value. And you only get access to someone's influence um, by getting to know them, right? And by forming a relationship. Influence is not a transactional thing in many cases.
Mm,
It's something that is kind of really shared, but shared only with people that you actually know who they are.
right. So that's a wonderful picture. And for all of its, many flaws, I sure think if we were talking in late 2019, we'd say this is something that is working about
Yeah,
many cities kind of tech communities. And that even that phrase tech community, I talk to other people and other business reporters, other corners of the economy, other industries. It's somewhat quaint that in tech there was always that word of community, and that wasn't the case about every industry. It is, I think, a lot of this kind of meetup community origin. So let's go to what has happened and what's going to happen next. I only have you for a few more minutes. So a few things took place in 2020 to 2022 or so. A lot of shift caused by a pandemic, both in where people lived, where people worked, how people thought about work.
yeah.
We've seen that, how people have told us in reader surveys they've gone more to some professional development online. Um, did the pandemic and remote work kill the local meetup scene that you and I knew for so many years?
Well, I mean, the shutdown. I mean, like the 18 months where everything was shut down, that wounded it significantly. because a lot of these things are based on momentum and like, near memories and
Habit.
stuff. I went to a
Yeah.
meetup, I had a good experience, I'll go to another, but 18 months, completely flushes it. Originally I thought that remote work would actually help meetups, that I thought, okay, all these people that are working remotely, they're actually going to want that social contact. And so they're more likely to go to meetups to replace something that they might have lost from having access to an in-person office culture. It turns out I'm completely wrong on that one. And what happened instead is the people that are fully remote, their lives kind of built around that routine. And so there's so much inertia that requires them to get up and go. And especially like in an evening or something, it makes it inconvenient for them in a way that I hadn't really spent a lot of time thinking about. So that definitely wounds it as well. And I think it hasn't killed it though. I mean, these things definitely happen. We have in-person meetups now that we can get between 20 and 25 people at without fighting too hard. A lot of these are from the existing the pre-pandemic community, but we're also getting new members from the post-pandemic community, people entering the field and whatnot. So there is something there, and I think a lot of it just gets down to what makes a meetup work in the first place. And so in my mind, there's 5 key players. You have the audience, you have the presenter, you have the organizers, you have the sponsors picking up the expenses, and you have the host. A venue for an in-person. And you just have to make sure everyone's getting something out of it. And for some of it, it's more obvious than others, right? Like for the venues they're getting a chance to showcase their office space. And there is a population out there that does want in office. Not that they need a place to work outside of the home, but they want an office culture. They want like there's something tangible that a subset of the workforce is looking for. And if you have that, being able to show that to people is definitely an advantage. And the sponsors are usually just looking to get their name out there. The audience is the tricky one. Like that's what we're talking about, right? Is that how do you get the numbers out to these things, and why are these people there? And that's something, pre-pandemic, things were easier. We might have forgotten, organizers and presenters and the various people might have forgotten why each individual person was coming. And if they were doing it just out of habit, then that's going to make it harder to reconstruct. And if they were coming for the content, then you got to focus on the content. If they were coming for something else, like for giveaways and raffles, or the lively conversation, or whatever it is, like that's kind of the tricky thing to get into the minds of the audience. And the composition has changed a lot. Like some of the people that might have been the most attractive participants may no longer be interested in that. And that isn't just because of the pandemic. It could be because at this point, about 5 years have passed, and there's like an evolutionary cycle of this. People, they kind of graduate out of it. They get into more senior roles. They might move away. That's kind of the temporal element can flush the pipes on these things as well. So it definitely hasn't killed it. There is something here, but it's going to take some work to get back even to like the 50% mark from where we were.
I know we're at time here, but you hit on an important point, and I'll turn it to like what happens next. What is your bet on the future of the local tech ecosystems, especially the meetup portion of the culture? I think a lot about what you just said of what have our expectations changed, and some of our over at Technically, we've done a fair bit of reader surveys and even just conversations anecdotally. I feel like some of that professional development that once took place at these events has really shifted online. As you said, it was like some of that existed in 2019. The tools were already there, but the habits shifted. I feel like that does feel like what happened. And so we're thinking a lot more. It's like it's relationships, it's people interaction. And how do we shift more of our events that is the focus? Meet a peer group, meet and share like-minded folks. But you tell me. It sounds like if I hear you correctly, it ain't killed it. You picture like nuclear winter for 18 months. And so all the trees are back to being seedlings, and it's going to take some time.
Yeah.
So what is your bet on the future here as we turn to the end of our conversation?
I think I think that's absolutely true. I think that we're back and we're growing. It's a long haul. I think that the big thing is, as an organizer and as a presenter, you have to be able to answer the question of why coming out to do this in person is better than just watching the video. Because in most cases, especially when you bring a credentialed speaker in, there's already a video, or there soon will be after. and yeah, I think the social aspects are really important. I think the interactions, I think making new people feel welcome is important. Like if you're an organizer and you get a first time visitor, you should make sure they come back. You should figure out, like, and just, it's not hard. And like that, interacting with new people is the hardest part of the meetups, whether you're a first time attendee or whether you're a long time attendee, with a first time person in the room with you. And you can't just fall into the easy patterns of being observant as a first time attendee, or as a long time attendee, just talking to the people that you already know. So I think engagement is a big thing for people that are looking to grow the community, because before, I think we were looking to sustain something that was already there. And so you have to, stability and growth are two kind of opposite ends of the spectrum. So you have to change your mindset a little bit to go back to a growth mentality for these things, which can be a little uncomfortable for people that had gotten so familiar with the stability of the earlier era.
I think it's one of the big questions of local tech economies. And Martin, I could talk to you a lot longer about it, but I'm over time. Martin, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
That's Martin Snyder, Vice President of Engineering at Pinnacle21 and a longtime meetup organizer. This has been a conversation about how and whether meetups will survive this pandemic winter. Martin, we'll talk to you next time. Everyone, will see you on the next Culture Builder Live. Everybody.
Thanks, Chris.
Bye.